WRMN here with Fridays with the Finest, Chief Anna Lally, and we have a host of people in the studio today. We have Detective Chris Hall, Detective Beth Esteriker, and Andrew Houghton. So everybody is here joining us, and we got to get the cameras over to everybody over there. And there we go. Chief,
morning,
how's it going
everyone.
today?
Good morning. How are you?
All right. Glad to have you in.
So, good morning, Elgin. Today I have the cold case unit back on, and, as promised, they'll come around every couple months just to do some highlights on where they're at with their cases, to keep the public interest, to, give some information in terms of tips, things that we're working on. But before I get into that, I just want to mention a couple things. Last night was the first night of our Citizen Police Academy. We had probably over, I'm guessing, maybe 30 people in the room, and people are, they want to come and learn about the Elgin Police Department. So it's a few weeks that they come every Thursday. They stay for a few hours and meet all bunch of officers. So thank you to everyone who attended. It is truly a great way to get to know the Elgin Police Department, get to know the fabulous people that work behind the scenes at the department. So that's the first thing I wanted to say. Second is April is Autism Awareness Month, and so we have a lot of stuff going on. But particularly this week, Detective Chad Benavides was on Fox 32 News along with Tamika Lachey Morales, who is the CEO of the Autism Hero Project. Tamika has been in studio with me many, many times. We partner with the Autism Hero Project. This will be our 6th year for our upcoming event on April 25th. Check out our social media for details. But part of that is we wrapped one of our police vehicles. It's called a Picture Exchange Communication System. And this is a custom interactive wrap. So it's a way for autistic, people who are autistic to communicate with police officers. So that is why they went on Fox 32 News to talk about the Autism Hero Project, to talk about the Blue Envelope program, which allows autistic drivers to communicate with police officers. And then, if you want to click that right, so anyone's watching on YouTube, there's the vehicle right there. So you can see it's very interactive. So if you're if you're nonverbal, you can point to some things. Yes, no, do you need help? So this is the first ever. So I've never seen a police vehicle like this. We worked with the Autism Hero Project on this. And again, I think this is a very visual display to our community. When you talk about being inclusive and hearing the concerns of the community. And so this is just another way that, we want to do these things, and we want to make sure that we are both receptive and responsive to the needs of the community. So thank you, Tamika. She was also at the city council Wednesday night, receiving a proclamation by the mayor. So she does amazing work. So I wanted to mention that. Detective Chad Benavides and Officer Robbie Soberano, who, this Autism Hero Project started, 5-6 years ago, and he's been on the show and talking about his story with his son. So all really great things. I just wanted to mention that. Sunday starts National Telecommunicators Week and National Animal Control Officer Week. We'll be posting some stuff on social media. So, if the community wants to jump on there and show their love for our telecommunicators, our animal control officers, again, they do a lot of stuff behind the scenes, and it's important that we recognize them, as this month belongs to them. And other than that, with the cold case unit, I also want to mention, I'm a huge space nerd, fan, geek, whatever you want to call it. So, obviously Artemis is splashing down later today. It's so exciting. I think when you look at that story, how inspiring. I mean, just, this is the things that, this is what moves humanity forward. And I love it. I mean, just to think about what they're doing, why they're doing it, to
and the
really,
benefits in our day-to-day life,
everything
that they have achieved and have brought forward to everybody to use. So,
it's exciting stuff. So, I think when you look at things like that happening and you think about what gives people their inspiration or what moves the world, like it's things like that, right? And then it's having that kind of purpose and, thinking about something other than yourself, thinking about sometimes the bigger things, which kind of leads me into my cold case unit here, right? People that are truly dedicated to doing something bigger, a bigger purpose, trying to find answers for families and loved ones. And so, so they are here today, and I'm really going to defer the time to them to, we're in season 3 of Somebody Knows Someone or something. Somebody knows something. There you go. So a lot of somebody, right? So, So guys, welcome to the show. Thank you again for being here. So you guys want to really jump into it and kind of, where are we at? How's the podcast going? any new developments. And again, if anybody has any questions, if they want to call in, we can take a call. But so I'll kick it over to you guys.
I guess I can start if you want.
Yes, sir.
We've released one bonus episode and episode 1 and episode 2. Episode 2 came out on Monday. We should have another one coming in another week or so. We've been doing bi-weekly every other Monday. So our first episode, we talked a lot about Waiteria's case and kind of who she was, her background, things like that. And then our second episode, Beth and Chris and I went down here to the Douglas Hotel. We went up to the Elgin Mental Health Center. We kind of walked around downtown for some different ideas of what was going on down here.
Where exactly is the Douglas Hotel? What building is it? Is it?
Yeah, so it's 156 Division. It's on the corner of Division and Douglas. It was originally the Fox Hotel, which was a big hotel in the 20s here in Elgin. And then it converted over to the Douglas Hotel in the 70s and was taking outpatient patients from the Elgin Mental Health Center up until 82 when it closed.
So when you walked in there, because when I listened to the podcast and you guys, I think someone had mentioned the floor, or the floor was like marble, or there was a pattern or something. Yeah. So I was wondering, like, when you walked in there, did you guys? I mean, could you imagine? Because part of the cold case too is you kind of want to put yourself in that time frame. Could you imagine that being a hotel? Is the layout still the same? Like rooms, or like how was that? Like to describe that.
I mean, it's historical, and you walk in, it looks like you're walking into a 1930s era lobby, and you can tell it's all the original woodwork, all the original, attention to detail on the marbling and the staircase. It's really cool to see. The rooms, the units themselves seem like they're fairly small. I mean, how many units would you say were in that building? Probably.
I think it was originally 125, and now it's 45, like senior living apartments. So they've converted all those hotel rooms into they've cut them almost over in half into an apartment complex.
Yeah.
So it's a senior living facility. The city bought it back in the 90s. I think 90, maybe 92, 94, something like that.
But walking the halls, and they're kind of a lower ceiling, or just kind of, is this the route that Waiteria would take? Up to her apartment, like what are the other exits and avenues that she would take if she were trying to get out of her apartment, and just trying to play all the possible scenarios that may have occurred in that building, but we still don't know what occurred outside of the building. But it was a nice checkpoint for us to actually make the visit to the building and to walk in her shoes, hopefully, so to speak.
My guess is she was probably pretty comfortable living there, because it seems like that they house a lot of people who are outpatient from EMHC. So she had been there for years, we think.
And I think that's important too. When we are trying to recreate, as these cold cases, some of them are, old, but some of you have to think about what was going on at the time. And some of these locations do not exist anymore, but this does. Although it's different, the footprint is the same. But just to kind of get the lay of the land, a lot of times, if you take any type of criminal investigative classes, and the thing that they'll tell you as a detective is go to the scene first and walk the scene, right? Don't talk, don't speak, just literally take everything all in, right? And walk it and think about, because a lot of times, if you're just in a rush to get to what happened, you're missing those small clues. So even though this happened many years ago, it's still important just to get that sense of like, this is where she lived. This is how it was. This was the layout, because how did people get into this building? How did they leave? Did somebody come and get her? So if you don't actually, and we have the luxury of this place still exists, just like the Elgin Mental Health Center, which I know, Beth, you guys went out there and you've been doing some extensive work on that. Do you want to talk a little bit about that?
Sure, yeah. We went out there and drove around, and obviously it's different than when it first existed. Like we went to the Elgin Museum and looked at old pictures to try to get some sense of some other stuff. It was a gorgeous complex, even though it was, for what it was designed for, but it was huge. I mean, it sounds like a lot of the older buildings had burned down. They had some fires out there, but there's still a lot of buildings that still exist. But a lot look like they're in pretty bad shape, and they're not using a ton of it. And we drove through a ton of the grounds, and you could see that it's just a huge property. And I don't know exactly, we can't tell which building she maybe was in at the time, but it appears from the research I did on getting all the old documents that she had been there she had several different times that she was there. And one time she had left and came back, and it seems like she was very familiar with it, and it was a comfortable place for her to go. And somebody even wrote a note in there saying, like, she's in danger of making this her home, living here. And that's obviously not the goal, right? It's to get them back out into into regular, for the regular world and
Yep.
not be living in
Back
it
into
here.
society.
Correct. So it's really interesting to see how it was. And I know like they've obviously scaled back their, what they do there and the buildings they use and the clientele they have there, but it's still a huge piece of property.
So where are you guys? I think, at this point, it's been a couple weeks. You've done a couple episodes. You guys are really kind of getting into it. So, I mean, right now as it stands, what is your hypothesis? What do you guys think?
It's hard to say. I mean, we ended our second episode saying we were going to go to Joliet for our third episode, and then we did not have records back from the state for Whiteria, and then Beth got those back. So our next episode is going to be kind of like our first season where we thought we were going to do one thing and something completely changes. So we kind of pivoted. We've spent a couple of weeks going through all those extensive records of Whiteria's time here in Elgin, and what we realized is she was actually here from about 1975 until 1982. So that kind of changes the thought process, because initially we had records saying she was at the hotel in May of 82. We just didn't know how much longer she'd been there before that. Well, now knowing that she was here from basically 1975 to 1982, Elgin was more her home than Aurora was at that point, and we know she was in other places. She was in Tennessee for a little while during the 70s. So that kind of expands
And she
our thought
originally-
process
yeah.
of what we want to look at. We initially said we thought, based on some witness statements, she either went back to Aurora or back to Joliet, or she could have gone somewhere else. Now we have to kind of expand and say, well, could she have gone back to Tennessee because she was down there in 1976 for a while? Could she have gone to Chicago because she had some ties to Chicago? So it's sort of opening up different avenues that we didn't expect initially.
Because how old is she in 1975?
When
Yeah,
she
hold on.
when
Who's
she
good at
disappeared in
math at this
82, she
group?
was
Not me.
she was 45 and 82. So
Okay,
she's in,
so-
her late 30s in 1975, 76.
So even if you were in your 20s in 1975, right, you're now in your 70s. So
Yeah.
this is why it's important that I think like we start talking about these cases, because I know you guys have put out, kind of a plea to people. Do you know her, right?
Yeah.
Did you stay here? Because, if people are in their 70s and their 80s, it's not like you're, 30 years old. So like we need to talk to these people now, right? Because I think that's the other thing too is when season one with Karen, what was interesting is that you guys had gone back to the bar and then started talking to people that were in there, right? Her coworkers, all this stuff. And they were older at that point, and
Yeah, they're in their 60s and 70s.
but some of that information that they brought forward, that she was in the bar and she was happy and she was, doing a hula hoop contest, but then she was on the phone with potentially her, like that information was invaluable to kind of put the story together of like, do we think it was more of an accident or was she abducted? So, and that will only happen because you're reaching out to these places and then you're saying, were you here at this space and this time? So have you guys had anybody, reach out to you guys saying, I know her, anything?
Not really. I mean, we're trying to track down some extended families still. A couple of the tips we've had come in since we started have been we've had some different private labs, and we had a civilian group that does genealogical DNA reach out to us because they had heard things in the podcast. So even though they're not tips, it's still people finding out and reaching out to us saying, hey, maybe we can offer some information here or there. We did have a listener reach out and give us some information about the Elgin Mental Health Center and the cemetery that was there and some records for that off some genealogy websites. So we kind of looked at that sort of stuff too. But we're still trying to track down people that would have actually known her or worked with her, because the hotel, at least at this point, we still don't have records of who was living there at that time,
And I think what's also, Beth, your dad was here. He's a retired lieutenant from the Elgin Police Department. And, how interesting is that to be able to talk to your dad? So how is that experience? Because, when I heard you on the podcast and I was like, how cool is that, right?
It's funny because we actually called him when we left there because we were asking him questions about this and that. We were asking him where some sort of bus station was, and we asked him about the hotel. He's like, "Oh yeah, the hotel was run by so and so," and all this stuff. And I'm like, "How you can't remember what I told you last week, but you remember
that's not
all
important.
this, right?
Yeah, come
But all this other stuff is obviously sewn in there. So it is interesting. And actually, we're going through some cases from the 80s, and his name's popped up on some of these other reports. So it's interesting to walk the same kind of path that he had done before in some of these
An
cases.
interesting part, too, what you said, Beth, is that you started at the museum. And then, Chief, you bring up that walk the site. See, all these little details make a big, big difference, because as you're walking the site and you look up, maybe you see a boarded window or you see a window, then you try and figure out, well, maybe somebody saw something from that window, from that vantage point. So you bring up, and so many people are involved in this. You've involved the community to help you solve these cases. I think that is so neat that every little piece makes a difference. You got a phone call from a listener. How cool is that it's a tip? Every tip makes a difference. So when they're asking for the help, don't think, this doesn't mean nothing. Everything means something.
Yeah, and I think it's those little details too that eventually, the hope, the ultimate hope is to find her, right? To see,
Sure.
Was she, there's so many possibilities, and so you hope, the hope is that you find her remains, right? Because she's 45 in 1975.
She'd be 89 on May 1st of this year.
Yeah. So,
it's
could
possible
she
she's
be?
alive, but
Yeah, it is possible.
probably not likely.
Right. But as more time goes on, that probability is less and less and less. So now it's kind of like, with Karen, we were able to actually find her remains. So as you guys are working this case, and, we have a whole bunch of other cases going on in the background, right? So I know our season 3 is all about her, but let's talk a little bit about some of the other cases that you guys are working, some updates, anything that you want the community to know, or anything that you're asking for assistance on.
Thankfully, we had one of our missing cases successfully closed. A 2021 missing person case of Chad Smith.
Yeah.
His mom reported him missing. There was a few rumors that he was in Chicago. Nothing was really substantiated. And there was no real teeth to that. And on March 18th this year, I got a call from the Cook County Sheriff's Deputy saying they located Chad in Chicago, alive and well, riding the L.
How do you like that?
Yeah.
Just think about that. When they came and told me, I was like, but just, what the odds are to be there to smoke, smoking a cigarette, you said? What was he doing?
Smoking a cigarette on the train, which you're not supposed
Smoking
to
it,
do.
but here's the thing. That was meant to happen. Smoke the cigarette, have the police officer
Yeah.
there, and be like, you can't do that, and then voila, right?
We had done our bonus episode about him, I think, like 5 or 6 days, just a couple days before that.
Yep.
So
Yeah.
it worked out in that, we were talking about him, and all of a sudden, here he is.
And then when you tell the family, right? So again,
Called his mother. She
Yeah.
took 4 or 5 times of repeating who I was, identifying who I was. This is not a joke. This is real. Like, you're telling me my son is alive and he's found? I said, yeah, he is. So that was truly impactful for her, I could tell. Facilitated getting the reunification process started with her. But, yeah, just
There's a reward of being in the unit. So many hours of dead ends, and then
Yeah.
to have something happen like that.
It's-
Oh my
it's
God,
a
does that
relief.
got to feel
It's-
good?
Yeah, getting good news is great news for us. So
And that was the thing too. When I was talking to our Citizen Police Academy, and I was talking about, when at the end of people's careers, and you at the end of your career, there's no doubt you'll start thinking about the beginning, and you're going to be thinking about, what are your top 5, top 5 best moments of your career? Because I like to forget the negative. I'm just, that's how I am. So, but actually, Karen Sheeper's case and sitting with her mom and them being able to say, the detectives being able to say, we found your daughter and here's your ring and here's this. Like, I'm never going to forget being in that room and being able to say that. And when, she's, and the mom, how gracious she is, thank you for starting a cold case unit. Thank you to the detectives. Thank you to this. It's like, we can't tell you thank you enough, right? Like, this is, and these stories and these detectives, for young officers to hear, or people who want to be police officers to see this, right? Like, the reward is not, you're not going to become a millionaire being a police officer. You're not going to, but what you're going to do is you're going to change people's lives quietly behind the scenes. And every single day, if you seize the moment and you seize the opportunities, you're going to have great stories like this. He's never going to forget that phone call. Andrew's never going to forget that whole week. I still think sometimes they're in a blur about it, right? Because it's so unreal. You can't even believe it, but it's truly something. Beth now getting to work with her dad, right? And, that's what a great connection that is, right? Who would have thought, right? That here. Yeah. So those are the things that, if you want to become a police officer and you want to do something to truly change someone's life for the better, here it is, right? And here's how it happens. So what other cases, do you guys want to mention some updates?
I mean, I think a couple of other homicide cases we're doing some different forensics and labs with. The last couple of weeks, we've started kind of prepping for what we think will be either our season 4 or season 5 as we come into that like time frame in the fall or in the spring. So we've been diving back into we have 7 murders from the 1980s. So we've been kind of looking back through those. So we have our first one's in 1980, and then our final one's in 1988. There's a girl, Michelle Garcia, who was murdered in 1980. Antonio Romero was stabbed to death in 1981. I think that was one that Beth's dad was one of the detectives that went out on it, so we were reading through the report.
I hope he wrote a good report. You know,
And then,
he's going to hear it.
Alfonso Munoz was killed in 81. I worked on that case a little bit when I first came upstairs before we had a cold case unit, when we would just kind of hand them out
Yep.
and go through them. So I'm pretty familiar with that case. And then we have several others throughout the late 80s into 88. I think the last one that's a cold case is Ricardo Pantoja in 1988. He's shot over on Henry Street. But it's kind of it runs the gamut. We have a stabbing, we have a shooting, we have a couple of girls that were killed. There was a fire in 1988. In 1988, 3 kids were killed in a fire. So that's one of our cold cases. There were 2 boys that were shot down on Spalding in 1986. That's one of our cold cases. So we're starting to kind of prep and look at those cases because, as people can imagine, even just doing like one episode and talking about them takes a lot of extensive preparation. We have to go through the whole case file. We have to figure out if there's family alive. We have to figure out if there's witnesses alive. We have to decide what information we would want to put out. So that's kind of where our focus is starting to slowly shift as we're waiting on labs on some of these other cases that we're working on from the 70s and from the 90s.
And you guys have some training coming up, some conferences you guys are going to go to. So I think that's the other thing, you know, as we create this cold case unit, you know, it's been about a year and a half that we've been in place. We're creating their workspace. We're creating, you know, adding people to the unit, you know, getting that going. But the next thing is obviously to continue to share our stories with people. And the work that we've done, but it's also to go and learn from other people. So you guys have some upcoming things going on, and if you wanted to mention just that and what you're looking forward to there.
This Sunday, we are leaving for San Antonio, Texas, to attend the International Cold Case Homicide Conference. It's a mouthful, but Andrew and Matt Vartanian, Sergeant Matt Vartanian, went last year, I believe. They raved about it. They said it was a phenomenal course. So Beth and I are really excited to get into it and to get the wealth of knowledge that will come from that conference. So we're excited to attend.
Yep.
And then we have a CrimeCon conference. Yeah, so that's the cold case conference that, you know, it's up there. That's where they're going to be heading to. And then there's another CrimeCon. So last year, Andrew and Matt were nominated for the best detective. What was it entitled?
It was the Clue Awards. It was like America's Greatest Detective.
Yes, and they were nominated. So we were out there for that. So they're going to go out there again. We're, you know, seeing if we're going to maybe have a booth there for a podcast. So some things in the works there, but all that kind of stuff is really good just to, you know, there's obviously larger police departments that have cold cases, well-established cold cases. And so, you know, we need to go and learn from them too. We need to go and see kind of what they do. Are we missing something? Can we enhance our unit? So we have a couple minutes left, so anything else you guys want to push out to the community, upcoming things? When's the next episode coming out? What can people be looking forward to here?
It'll be a week from Monday, so our 3rd episode will come out, not this coming Monday, but the following Monday, and then bi-weekly after that. But really we're really still looking for people that would have known her, especially now knowing she was in Elgin for, 75 to 82, people that knew her when she was in Elgin. You know, I think Beth or Chris say in one of the episodes that, did she go to church in town? Did she have social circles in town? Did she have friends in town? Like things like that. Roommates. We don't know if she even had a roommate in her room. It doesn't seem like she probably did, but we can't say that for sure. So people that either lived at the Douglas Hotel, worked at the Douglas Hotel, worked at Fox Valley Mental Health, or worked at Elgin Mental Health Center had contact with her. We're really just trying to find people that can give us more information about her.
Okay. So also I want to mention as we close out here too, you guys want to say hi to anyone? I always ask so you don't get in trouble with whoever here. No, they don't care. They're not saying hi to anyone this morning. So April 25th, I mentioned earlier our Autism Awareness Hero Project, April 25th, 1 o'clock to 4 at the police station. So Andrew, you're wearing a blue badge, right? So do you might maybe want to mention a little bit about that?
Yeah, so we do. We can self-purchase these, and then the proceeds for that go to charity for autism, different charities. So we can wear this during April. It's got the puzzle pieces in the middle. We also do one for breast cancer. We have a pink one for breast cancer. So kind of like the car wraps, it's just another way for us to work with the community, and then these help us raise charity money for certain causes. And
you'll also see Elgin police officers, their patches, some other patches. Mm-hmm. That's our icon on the Facebook page, our main page. If you look at it, it's the infinity symbol. So we also have Elgin officers wearing patches this month for autism acceptance. And again, I truly want to thank the Autism Hero Project, Tamika. And, that relationship too started, 6 years ago with then Commander, now Chief, Eric Echeverria of the Peoria Police Department. Eric and Tamika knew each other for a very long time. And this is the value and I think the importance of connection and relationships with people. So, a lot of times these things start just very organically, them having a conversation, Eric coming talking to me. And now, we've been training officers for 6 years on, how to manage calls to ensure that, we have the best outcome and the best resolve. So really great work happening. Again, if you can stop by Heroes United, it is the 6th annual event, April 25th, 1 to 4. At the Elgin Police Department. Somebody asked me the other day if the petting zoo is going to be there. The petting zoo is there. I think that's a big, we do some traffic stop assimilations. You can sign up for that if you go on our social media website and click the icon, the QR code, that will take you to it as well. So thank you guys for coming on the show.
Thank you.
You guys will be back maybe in a month or so and kind of see after your conferences, come back. Maybe let's touch base a little bit on where we're at. And again, if anyone has any information, who should they call, our website, all that good stuff. If somebody wants to give that, that's you guys.
It's the dedicated website. It's the Elgin It's Elgin.
Our website. Yeah. Elgin Cold Cases.
Elgin Cold Cases.
ElginColdCases.com, yeah. And then you can do
We'll pull it up here, so if you're watching on Facebook.
Our email is coldcasetips@elginil.gov.
That's right.
And then 847-289-COLD is our tip line.
That's why I ask you guys, what's the website? Because somebody, I'm
It took me a second.
It's Join EPD for our recruiting. It's
Yeah, we've got a million.
But yeah, so there's an Elgin PD cold case page, and then also obviously you can download our podcast. And so any information that you do have, please let us know. Our hope is to find her. Our hope is to be able to, because I know you guys have been talking with the family too, right? And so, sometimes the family wants to be involved and sometimes they don't. But our purpose is to make sure that we're always having the family in the forefront of our minds of the things that we do. And, if you want to click that on the bottom where it says elgincoldcases.com, if you want to put that on so everyone can see it, that is our website, Elgin PD Cold Cases. You can learn all about our cold cases. You can submit a tip. You can learn more about the detectives and our podcast. So thank you guys again. Truly appreciate the work that you do. And we'll be back maybe in a month or so with these guys.
This is great. Thank you, everybody,
Thank
for
you.
coming on. Chief Anna Lally from the Elgin
Thank
Police
you.
Department, our good chief. Chris Hall, Beth Stericker, and, of course, Andrew Houghton wearing the blue badge. All right, everybody. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
And we will be back next week with Fridays with the Finest.